Welcome into another edition of Jungle Juice Podcast. Sam Gormley and Mick Nelson with you on a Victory Wednesday. Mick, how you doing?
Doing well. How about yourself?
Heck, anytime that the Bengals have a win, what more do I have to say?
Man. Yeah, no, it's a great time. It's a great time. The offense looked great yesterday, Sunday. Got a much needed win. If anybody notices, we have a change of scenery on my end. Just wanted to give a shout out to my grandparents, Brenda and Charlie Harvey, for letting me use their house to film this today. And then also it's wedding week for my sister Sammy. So happy wedding week.
Happy wedding week to Sammy and Chris. Many years of bliss. And I know you're having an anniversary coming up here real soon as well.
Yep, a couple weeks on the 23rd. We're going to, I can't remember. Sam said we're going to Showdown downtown. I don't know if you've heard of that. It's a
no, I have not.
6 downtown. So looking forward to that. So
interesting. So big things coming here over these next couple of weeks, but we've got plenty to talk about on the show today. We'll, of course, recap the Cardinals game on Sunday. We have the good, the bad, and the ugly. Luckily today, a lot more good than there is necessarily bad and ugly. We're going to revisit the panic button that we went over last week on last week's show and kind of ask the question of how much of this was the Cardinals and how much of this was actually some optimism here coming up for the Bengals moving forward. Mick, I have a trivia question for you that you don't know anything about that I'm excited to drop on you at some point. And then, of course, we'll preview the Seahawks game and have our picks, your keys, and so on, get you ready for this game. As always, we want to thank our good buddy Josh Isles over at WDN Today. Make sure you follow him. Follow us as well. You can subscribe to us on our YouTube channel. Follow us on Facebook. We have all of the different ways for you to join us and keep track. And if you're watching with us, drop us a comment with how you feel maybe about what we're talking about. Tell us we're wrong. Tell us we're right. Tell us what you love. Tell us what you hate. Whatever it might be. We can take it. We're big boys, right, Mick?
Yep. No, open to any and all types of criticisms. And then I'm open to proving you wrong as soon as you say I'm wrong. So,
and we're open to you praising us as well. We do appreciate that every once in a while when it comes to it. But I think speaking of praising, that's probably where we need to start and go with a recap from the Bengals 34-20 win against the Arizona Cardinals on Sunday. I know that I picked 24-10, so I got the spread right. I was a little disappointed because I put into my sports bet. I did you can put on there the guess the exact score. So I guessed what I said last week of 24-10, and I didn't get anything back, obviously, since it was not exactly correct. I thought they might give me some money for having the spread right at least, but it didn't matter. And I think as a whole,
the spread, if that's the case,
but
the minus 13.5 if that were the case.
I would have had to have created my own, and I don't know that I was. I made the pick that way, but I don't know that I was that confident.
Yeah, so just to let you know, you can do alternative lines.
Yes,
I know
yes.
Kind of new sports betting.
Yes, so, yeah. I have learned that, and I don't know that I could have gotten it.
Bank account dwindled since.
No, I've used
Eagle a couple weeks ago.
I have used my grandma's rule that which she always said when it comes to sports gambling or gambling in general is when she would go to the boat, she would take $20 in an envelope, and if that $20 lasted her the entire day, then she was thrilled. If it lasted her 5 minutes, then she was done for the day. So when I started, I put $20 in. And I'm positive right now, so that's what matters the most in the long run. And I hopefully will not have to add more money.
When you say you used your grandma's, I totally thought you were going to say, "Yeah, I used my grandma's
credit card information
account. I used my grandma's Vanguard account, and thanks for all the funds, Grandma."
Listen, whatever works sometimes. But as far as the Bengals-Seahawks game or the Bengals-Cardinals game, as we always like to separate it into the good, the bad, and the ugly. And luckily today, when we talk about the good, we got quite a bit to talk about when it comes with the good from that game, and I think you got to start with the obvious good, and that's the FedEx Air Player of the Week and the Offensive Player of the Week for the.
Did he actually get it? I knew he was nominated.
Joe Burrow was the FedEx Air Player of the Week, and then Jamar Chase was AFC Offensive Player of the Week. When you combine both of that, and no way.
No way. Unbelievable. That's just a run-of-the-mill performance from Jamar Chase.
Oh, yes.
200 yards,
15. He was unbelievable. And so when you combine all of that, I think that's where you got to start with the good. They were fantastic on Sunday.
Yeah. That's the offense looked pretty good for the most part. The run game, it looked like it took a while to get going, but that eventually started coming around towards the end. Joe looked good. Jamar looked fantastic. He had that presser at the end of the Titans game, and he did nothing but prove any doubters wrong on Sunday. I don't think there were any doubters. I mean, but just put everything to bed real quick. 7-11, he's always open.
I love that he dropped that line afterwards, obviously. I think it probably was an homage to Chad Johnson, who kind of was the first one to really bring that up. And, I mean, it was just one of those things that it didn't even look like the Cardinals were trying to stop him, which was wild.
Yeah.
Because, and even if and I think part of that goes to is that just how good Jamar Chase was on Sunday, because he made it look like no matter what they did, because there were moments where I know that they were, pulled it out to the L22 and, Mark Sanchez is like, oh, look, there's 1, 2, 3 on him. He's being triple teamed and he's still catching it.
Yeah. So Sam Monson from PFF kind of said this best, is like, you can game plan for Jamar Chase as much as you want to going in, but you really don't know what's in store for you until you actually play against him and just see what he does on the field in terms of his speed and his route running. So, you have a bunch of inexperienced secondary players for the Cardinals who are going up against Jamar Chase for the first time. Of course, Jamar Chase should be able to feast on that, and he did just that. So, yeah, great game from Jamar. Joe looked more like himself than obviously we've seen all year. We saw a little bit of escapability in the pocket from Joe. We saw him scramble off, I think, at least a couple of times. There was one really good scrambler, one vintage Joe Burrow scramble that. Sammy's already here. Sammy loves her some Joe Burrow. Also, happy wedding week, Sammy. I don't know if she caught that, but that's my sister, everybody. Anyways, Joe looked more like himself. The PDJ kind of said it best. Joe Burrow has that magic factor to him, and you kind of saw that a little bit on Sunday. We saw our first successful deep pass play of the year to Jamar Chase. That was kind of a moment of exaltation for me when I saw that. I don't know about you, but that was killer.
100%. And it turned out to be the longest air pass, like through the air, the longest pass that Joe Burrow has had in his career, which just adds to it. Yes, it was the longest, like not yardage wise, obviously, but in the air. Like they can now track that through the analytics and such. And it was the longest one through there.
Longest air pass. Has he been lying to us the whole time?
Well, I know that they asked him today during his press conference and pretty much said, like, did you, like, when you threw it, did you know it? And he pretty much said that it felt really good when it came out. Like, it was one, because you can tell when you throw that, one comes out and it just feels right. That's exactly what he said, is it just felt right on that pass. But I think if we're talking offense as well, we can't go without mentioning Trenton Irwin. No T. Higgins on Sunday, and Trenton Irwin was great filling that T. Higgins role.
Yeah, no, he was definitely good in that wide receiver 2 role or that outside wide receiver role that T. Higgins usually occupies. And the stat line's not gonna wow you by any means, but he looks like a good, competent wide receiver out there, and it looked like the offense wasn't missing a beat without T this week.
And I know last week I mentioned we did the good, the bad, and the ugly. And in the ugly, I mentioned Trenton Irwin, and of his game specifically, it was the punt return where he was not good. He had one attempt and he muffed it. This time, though, he had the punt return and it was multiple good ones. Like he ran the ball really well. And you didn't really see much of a difference from him and Charlie Jones, from what Charlie Jones was doing earlier in the season.
Yeah, no, I think we should just cut Charlie Jones right away now. What do we even need Charlie Jones for? We have Trent Irwin.
Your sarcasm factor is on a new level here today.
On a whole different. I've been with my family all week.
I was going to ask, is this the Nelson family coming out in you that you've got the sarcasm is coming up to a new level?
Oh yeah, that's 100% the case. Been with the mom the past since what, Sunday. So 4 days with my mom. There were 4 days with my sister. Chris isn't very sarcastic, so like he didn't really contribute to the sarcasm today. But Mom and Sammy definitely did their job in that department there. So
I think
but yeah, that was.
I think another one of the goods, and I think it's one that 100% needs to be mentioned because I think the guy gets a lot of hate. And listen, I know I'm on the fence, always usually going for him. I think Zach Taylor called a really good game on Sunday.
He did. They took advantage of a lot of soft zone, at least in the first half that I noticed. I didn't really watch the second half, all 22, but got to the first half. They took a lot of they took advantage of soft zone coverage. Looked like a lot of short passing plays to Jamar, a lot of just slant routes that you were able to rattle off for 10, 15 yards every play. They were marching down the field in that first quarter. Arizona kind of counteracted that in the second quarter. They didn't really move the ball very well until that one drive. They got stuffed at the goal line. And then they started to open stuff up a little bit later in the game. Obviously, the deep pass to Jamar is kind of the highlight of that. Yeah,
and I think Zach called a great game, and I know that there were some people criticizing, the decision to go for it on goal at the one. I think in that scenario, I'd have gone for it as well.
Now, so what was the score? It was 14-10 when that happened.
14-10 right? Arizona, correct.
Yeah, go for it. Go for it.
And it was, if it wasn't under 2 minutes, it was right around the 2-minute warning there. I don't remember the exact timing, but I think that also is because you're pretty much saying is, okay, you've got a couple of folds with this. First off, it's 2 minutes, give or take. I don't think Arizona had any timeouts at that point. You're pretty much saying, okay, Josh Dobbs, if you can drive down 99 yards and under 2 minutes with no timeouts, then okay, you deserve your points.
I think Zach Taylor knew that CTB was about to rip off an interception.
And that's kind of the other point is that when you have players backed up, turnovers go up. Like the chances of turnovers, because you're trying to not get sacked in the end zone. And because of that, he fed Cam Taylor-Britt, which could probably be, as far as play-wise, Cam Taylor-Britt, his first career interception as far as, and again, when this goes in the stats, it's his first career interception. Yes, he had one in the playoffs, but if you ask the NFL, this was his first career. And I think he was the first Bengal to ever have his first career interception be a pick six.
Yep. That's I did not know that. I mean, first statistical interception, his second meaningful interception, I guess. He had that pick against Buffalo in the playoff game last year. But Pratt called the pick again, Riley says. What is he talking about? Pratt's pick, or is he talking about CTB's pick?
Jermaine Pratt, I think before the game kind of said the whole thing like, you're going to get yours today, or something along the lines of that. I think in his mic'd up, he had said something like that. He was taking some of the credit.
Well, give credit where credit's due. Jermaine Pratt also had a really good game yesterday. And, you saw him making crucial tackles. He obviously had that fourth down stop in the backfield, I believe, in the third quarter, and then obviously the pick towards the end of the game. So great game by Jermaine Pratt. Sam Hubbard looked pretty good. Had a couple of really nice run stops in that first half that I noticed. So yeah, overall good performance by the team. A much needed good performance by the team, and they're back in the race.
I think another good that you got to mention is Trey Hendrickson, 2.5 sacks and a near pick six. And he dropped a pick that probably would have turned into 6 points himself. I mean, anytime you get 2.5 sacks, and I think he's up to 6 right now on the season. I know I asked you before the year of over under. I think I said it early at like 15, and you made me, I think off air, lower it to like 12 and a half. And I mean, he's on pace to shatter that right now. He's having an unbelievable season and an under the radar season.
No, I think it's under the radar for sure. I don't think it's under the radar in terms of it being noticed by the boys over at PFF. He is rated as a top 10 edge rusher this year. I want to see who's above him right now just to see if there's any notable names. Andrew Van Ginkel from the Dolphins, Micah Parsons and DeMarcus Lawrence for the Cowboys, who they've gone up against easy opponents all year, other than that Niners game. Max Crosby, no surprise. Aiden Hutchinson, TJ Watt, Myles Garrett, Nick Bosa. So he's in good company there. And he's ranked at number 9 right now with a 91.3 pass rush grade. I think the run defense grade is what's kind of dragging him down. Trey Hendrickson has the third highest pass rush grade.
Yeah, he's been great in rushing the passer, and he's had a lot more hits too as well, or even pressures that don't go down as sacks, but they're still just as important because it causes missed throws. Or somebody else comes in and cleans up the sack for him. Because that's been one of the things that has really stood out for me, is that really, other than the Ravens game, the pass rush has been something that Lou Anarumo this year has seen more of. I mean, he's called more of it as well, which has been different. And I know he said today that I think he said something along the lines of that it's not necessarily planned. Sometimes that's just how the game works this year.
Well, you kind of do kind of should think that way, the way that Lou's thinking with that, because in at least with these first few games, the pass rush should be feasting a little bit, especially the last three matchups they've had. I can't tell you how many times past 3 weeks I've said key to winning the game on the defensive end is a pass rush, because they've gone up against very lackluster or bottom 10, bottom 5 offensive lines with the Rams, the Titans, and the Cardinals in back weeks.
And luckily, it's not like they're going up against, the Eagles' offensive line this week, or, something in an elite offensive line. They're going up against an offensive line that they can maybe do some stuff again this week. Be something we'll talk about here.
Not like they're going up against any world beaters in Seattle. I agree with
Correct.
That.
We'll talk about that a little bit later on. To me, though, Mick, we usually separate the bad and the ugly, and I think it's almost like, and you might have some separation, but to me, I almost just combine both of them in there today. I guess we could say that the defense as a whole was bad because there was some good that brings them up to the good and doesn't necessarily make them ugly, but then there was some major ugly.
Yeah. Tackling has been an issue again. It's for a second week in a row. It's not really the MO of Lou Anarumo or any of his defenses, unless if you want to throw 2019 and 2020 in there. But tackling was bad. You can tell they're missing the safety duo, I think, right now. Nick Scott is probably playing for his job right now, and he's not doing a very good job of that. Jordan Battle came in and looked a lot better. It looks like that they're kind of platooning that role right now.
They are. Lou Anarumo said that today, that is a platoon pretty much competition right now, is that they really liked what they've seen from Jordan Battle all year. Especially, really, Jordan Battle has made, I think, to them pretty much one mistake. Yeah, and that was taunting. In a preseason game. I think it was the Packers game that he had the taunting penalty. And if that's your one mistake as a rookie in a preseason game, you're feeling pretty decent.
Yeah. Jordan Battle's looked really good, especially in coverage, which is where Nick Scott is particularly lacking in. Battle's going to be great. Good. A goat. I don't know if he's going to be a goat, but I think he's going to contribute as a starter for sure.
He could be Von Bell. He definitely
could fill that Von Bell role for sure.
Yeah, because I think Von Bell is your upper mid. Is he upper mid tier safety? He is a solid safety. I think that's Jordan Battle. Jordan Battle is not going to be your elite safety. Now he could be, but I think he could be a guy that is just he's back there and you don't think about him, which is the best thing that you can do with a cornerback. Is when you don't call his name, it usually means something good is happening.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with that. So tackling was an issue. That was probably the biggest issue in the game. How did Brad do? I didn't really look at any of the punts.
Yeah,
Brad,
he had a couple of good punts. We had one of 59 yards that his net ended up getting hurt because one of my uglies goes to Devin Harper, had just a bonehead penalty on a punt return that, Brad Robbins lets one go for 59 yards. And it was about a 19-yard return, which is not great. And then you tack on another 15 that ended up giving the Cardinals the ball in positive territory at the 49 of their own. And 6 plays later, they score a touchdown. But for a guy that was on waivers 2 weeks ago and is joining a team, I can't imagine that probably set too well in Darren Simmons' pockets and Zach Taylor's feeling and Lou Anarumo. When you could throw another linebacker out there in coverage, especially for a guy that when he came over from the Cowboys a couple of weeks ago, that they thought he is going to be a special teams guy. That's his background. That's his thing. But good special teams player don't make boneheaded plays out of bounds like that.
What's this guy's name? Darren Harper?
Devin Harper.
Devin. I was looking up Darren Harper, and I didn't have
Probably why you couldn't find him.
Devin Harper, Wikipedia.
Because he came from the Cowboys. He was put on waivers by them.
Well, not a good first impression, Devin Harper.
Yes, because he was inactive in the game against the Titans. This was the first game that he was active. And then, one of his first moments as a Cincinnati Bengal is his name gets called is because he has a tackle out of bounds.
That's not even a tackle. He's like shoving somebody.
Yeah.
I don't even know if he was shoving like a guy that was even playing.
Yeah, it was unnecessary roughness. It's things that, if we're being honest, Zach Taylor teams don't do.
No. That's what Mike McCarthy teams do. That makes a lot of sense. It came from Dallas.
You're not wrong about that. Another one of the uglies, and it might have been just necessarily one play, but it stands out. Jalen Davis got toasted.
Oh yeah.
I
made a point. Why I was like, why is Jalen Davis even in right now? Like,
because they had to play 5 corners because Cheeto was out, and it probably was to the point. I think that Cheeto injury might have happened too late to where they couldn't call up an Allen George or I'm trying to think of one of the other corners they have, or Sidney Jones from the practice squad. But Jalen Davis he's never really done anything that has made me confident in him. Then again,
he's a special teamer. I think that's why he's on the team still. I think he's good in that phase of the game.
And he just didn't have it on that at all.
No.
And listen, bad plays happen. It's inevitable. But that was one that really stood out to me. And then I put on here just as a whole, and it kind of ties into your tackling point, the run defense. Not great. Now, a couple big plays does inflate some of those totals. I mean, they had the one, Rondale Moore had the run around the far side on the kind of fake trick play. Was pretty much, I think this is probably the way to describe it, where he kind of curled around the edge. That inflates it, and then James Conner had a 35-yard run. So on 2 plays, you had 76 yards.
Yeah, the James Conner run was particularly frustrating for me because there was I think I counted 4 missed tackles on one play. So I think Mike had a missed tackle. I think Trey had one in the backfield, and then Nick Scott did what Nick Scott does, and I think DJ might have had a missed tackle on that. I can't remember. Maybe it was CTB, but yeah, that play was very frustrating. That was a 35-yard play that turned into a touchdown drive. So tackling's got to get better. And like I said, I wonder if they're missing the safety duo. Obviously, Jesse and Vaughn were their strengths were in the run game. Whereas I don't know if you're really seeing that in Dax Hill, and you're definitely not seeing that in Nick Scott. So I wonder if they're missing the safety duo a little bit. And then Logan Wilson's been kind of disappointing as a whole in terms of his tackling and run defense as well. He's been
kind of Jekyll and Hyde this year, where he's had some really good moments. He's had a couple of picks.
Well, all of his good moments are in coverage, though, not against the run.
And that's got to get better because, I mean, you're going up against a team like this week who can run the ball pretty well with a couple of really good running backs. And then, after the bye, San Francisco, maybe the best running back in the NFL. And I know that Christian McCaffrey is almost I feel like he's not even technically a running back. Like, I know he is, but I feel like he deserves to be in a position all of his own because he's so
army. He's like the Taysom Hill without all of the debauchery of Taysom Hill.
He's an athlete. I think is like the best way where
he's the all-purpose player.
Correct. That's probably a great way to describe it. And then you don't really have that with the Bills. The Bills running game is their big weakness. But then you're going to jump back into these AFC North teams that, Baltimore, you got to play them again. You got to play the Browns again. You got to play the Steelers twice. At some point, they're going to probably have to start relying on their run more. You're going to have to make sure that run defense gets better. But I think to wrap up this segment, I think we can kind of revisit one of the big topics that we talked about last week was on the panic button. And we talked about whether we were pushing it or not. And I think that the question I have for you, Mick, is how much of this, if we are being 100% honest with ourselves, which is what we're doing on this podcast, how much of the feeling that we should have right now should be, okay, it was just the Cardinals, or how much of it should be, yes, they've finally broken out of this slump and we're going to start rolling again because Burrow looked himself.
Yes.
Thanks. Good job.
On one hand, you can say it's just the Cardinals who have probably the worst overall roster in the league, and the Bengals should have taken advantage of that. And they did. They took advantage of it.
And that's what good teams do to bad teams. And if we're being honest, most teams haven't done that to the Cardinals this year.
No, they haven't. I mean, I guess San Fran did do that last week. They obviously won by 2 scores. The Cowboys had a straight up stinker against the Cardinals in week 3. The Cardinals have looked like a team that's they looked like a feisty team so far this year. But it looks like a good team beating up on a bad team on Sunday. But I don't know. The rest of the schedule still looks tough.
But I think your word choice was interesting there, though, because you said it looked like a good team beating up on a bad team.
Yeah.
How much of that, because the Bengals had not been a good team for the first 4 weeks. Is good
I guess my question is what happens when they start playing the good teams again? Because you're going to face better pass rushes than what the Cardinals had to offer on Sunday. Seattle, although they don't have the best pass rush, they did just sack Daniel Jones like 10 times in a game. So
now, then I think me and you and Riley watching with us could probably get a sack against the Giants' offensive line. But
they very well could have. We very well could. But so you've got to put that you got to factor that into play. You've got to factor that they're playing the Niners in 3 weeks or whatever, and that's going to be an interesting matchup to see. And I don't know if it's going to be a particularly good one for the Bengals. And then you've got the Bills, you've got Steelers, you've got a lot better
Texans playing better too.
Yeah,
but I think to go to this question though, I think how much of this was the Cardinals and how much of this was breaking out of the slump, and I think it probably was a mixture between both of them.
Hence the answer, yes.
Yes, and I think that you saw, because like you said, they looked like a good team beating up on a bad team. And that's what good teams do. And was there some things, obviously, that we just talked about that makes us go, yes. But then again, if we're being honest, there are very few games that we're thinking, yes, like that was perfect, great, awesome, running away, we feel great. But I think the biggest thing is that the offense looked good.
Yeah.
And to me, my biggest takeaway, and we touched on this a little earlier, as to why I think it was more of the latter and breaking out of the slump, is that Joe Burrow's mobility was back.
Yes.
And that is why I'm thinking it's more towards the latter point and not more towards the Cardinals point.
Yeah, I could agree with that statement. I guess we'll kind of see what, if he's dealing with more pass rush in later weeks, how he's able to really, overcome that. I came away from the Cardinals game encouraged that they could get this thing turned around for sure.
Are you ready for your trivia question?
Yeah.
You don't know that this is happening, but it's a good one, and I hope you haven't seen this float around because that'll take away a lot of the fun of this trivia question. But are you ready?
Yeah.
Joe Burrow has played all but 3 teams in his NFL career. Name them. Joe Burrow has played all but 3 teams in his NFL career. Can you name them?
Giants.
There's one. Pretty good question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Making you think.
Texans.
There's 2.
Ooh.
You got this one.
Seahawks. Yeah. Is that the Seahawks? Yeah.
It is the Seahawks. Good job. You went 3 for 3 on that. Texans, Giants, and Seahawks. are the 3 teams that Joe Burrow has never played. So 2 of them he'll get to wipe off the year, and maybe he'll play the Giants in the Super Bowl this year.
Yep.
I'd like to know
what that in right now.
What odds can I get on DraftKings for that? A Bengals Giants Super Bowl.
I think you can definitely parlay that. I don't know what.
I might have to look. Tommy's got the faith in you, Mick. I'm curious to see. I thought that was a good question, and I was trying to sit there and think, and I accidentally read the answer before I saw it, and I was like, would I have gotten that?
I was immediately thinking of teams like after the ACL tear, like which interconference matchups happened after.
And see, the Texans, I think, would have been the one I would have forgotten.
Yeah, no, we haven't played the Texans in a while.
Yeah, they haven't since 2020 when they beat Deshaun Watson. Yep. But I think this perfectly leads right into our next point of the Seahawks preview. As the Seahawks come to Paycor Stadium on Sunday at 1:00 as Ian Eagle and Charles Davis have the call there on CBS. We go back to CBS, which makes me happy. Even though I won't be watching the game on TV, it's still like something about Fox. I don't know. It's just not
like Fox. I actually prefer Fox over CBS.
Oh, you're crazy. Yeah, no, I could not disagree more.
I think it's the graphic. Like, I hate CBS's graphic. It's like way too long. I like the whole minimalist function that Fox and NBC have with and Amazon. They just have the little graphic center of the screen, have both the logos, points.
So see, for me, the talent on CBS is much better. So that's why I'm more towards CBS. And that's also me coming as a broadcaster. I recognize things like that of doing it. Is I just think as a whole,
fact that Tony Romo is the highest paid color commentary guy for CBS.
I like Charles Davis though. Charles Davis does a good job for them.
I like Charles. There's a reason they put him on Madden every year.
Yeah, because he's really good. But regardless, we're talking about things that are unrelated to the Bengals against the Seahawks on Sunday. I'll find it interesting too is how much of a factor is, and I meant to go back and look this up to see if there were any like true stats based on it, but you have a West Coast team coming and playing at 1:00. Does that mean anything, or are we reading too much into it? Because that's 10 a.m. technically for them. Like, does that mean anything, or since they're professionals, it really doesn't?
Yes. Again, I don't know. I feel like I've seen some games where, like, obviously West Coast teams going to East Coast are kind of lagging. I thought I saw a lot more. I haven't really seen many this year. But like the one game I'm thinking of is like 2015 Chargers coming to play the Bengals in week 2, and the Chargers look like they just woke up. And
well, and then you can think of the opposite. Now, this is a little bit misleading based on, talent wise, but 2019 week 2 49ers at Bengals.
And they just blow the doors off of us.
That was not a good Bengals team. But shout out, John Ross had a touchdown in that game. That was when we thought John Ross had actually figured it out under Zach Taylor. Mm-hmm. You remember? Like, we thought, oh, maybe John Ross actually doesn't suck. And then we soon learned, no, he's actually pretty terrible. But Bengals offense against the Seahawks defense, I think is the best way to start, because the Seahawks defense it's a very interesting defense. For one, and you touched on this a couple of times, Mick, is the pass rush. They've had 16 sacks this year. Interesting aspect of their 16 sacks by 10 different players. So it's not like they have, your TJ Watt, that's going to have 6, 7, 8 of those sacks. They can really spread it out. But the guy on that defense on that pass rush that's probably the most dangerous and the most notable is Bobby Wagner.
Yeah. I didn't really note Bobby Wagner. I was going to go with Boye Mafe, who had a few, more than a few in that Giants game. But yeah, Bobby Wagner being back with the Seahawks is huge. And I think really Bobby Wagner provides the most value in the run game. He's probably first ballot Hall of Famer, right? Would you say so?
Maybe not first ballot, but I think he'll be a Hall of Famer without question.
Oh, I think he's a no doubt Hall of Famer. I would be surprised if he's not first ballot. But him coming back to Seattle, he's been huge for that defense and providing leadership
in that linebacker position. Other than that, though, I mean, they've got a few. Sorry.
I was going to say it's not a terrifying pass rush. There's no question about that. And I think, like we said, that 16 sack number is, you kind of have to look at that through a different colored glasses, because 10 or 11 of those came against the Giants a couple of weeks ago. So you're thinking it was 5 through the first 3 games of the season, because the Seahawks didn't play last week. So I mean, read into that how you want. And 5 through 3 or 6 through 3, that's a little bit more average.
I think this is going to be probably the best litmus test you're going to get of this Bengals offensive line this year. You're not going up against a lackluster offensive line like you had the past 3 games, but you're also not going up against Myles Garrett. When they went up against him in week 1, you're going up against probably a pretty middle of the road pass rush. And I kind of want to see, it's going to be interesting to see how the offensive line can hold up against that. Is this offensive line as good as advertised?
And
because
I think
we thought it was going to be a good offensive line going in.
And I think with that too, is it kind of ties into the next point, is if your offensive line's struggling, you're going to want to get the ball out quick. And going up against they're not the Legion of Boom, but it's honestly, it's a young and it's a solid secondary. You got Reek Woolen, was like a 5th round pick and played like an all-pro pretty much. Devin Witherspoon. You've got Jamal Adams is back. In fact, that leads me, probably this would be a good time to talk about the injury report, especially when we talk about Jamal Adams. He cleared concussion protocol in practice for the first time today as he came back from his injury against the Giants and had the concussion in the first quarter of that game. So he's finally going to come back, potentially play his first full game on Sunday against the Bengals. And when you add him, an extremely versatile and talented safety, into the back, it'll be interesting to see how the Bengals game plan around him potentially.
Yeah, for sure. It's a good secondary unit. You rattled off Reek Woolen and Devin Witherspoon. That could be, a couple years down the road, that could be one of the best cornerback tandems in the league. They could be looking like that towards the end of this season. I think that's how good those 2 guys could be. Another name that we haven't mentioned, he hasn't been playing very well this year, but Quandre Diggs in at the safety position, or maybe he's a nickelback position. He's been on the defense for a while and has usually put up some pretty solid years. And then Julian Love coming over from the New York Giants. He again, another good depth piece in that defensive backfield. So I think it's going to be pretty interesting to see, like, how are these wide receivers down T. Higgins potentially? Now, I know you did note that he was limited in practice on Wednesday or today. But, how are these wide receivers going to match up against their secondary? I think that's going to be a really interesting matchup to see.
Because as Tommy brings up the point here, writing in on Facebook, he's, the Seahawks secondary can make plays, but also give up a lot of completions and yards, ranked near the bottom of any, the several pass defense categories. Now, that can be a tiny bit misleading because they have dealt with so many injuries. So this will be one of the first times they've fully been all the way together. And that's kind of the question of, it's probably another one of our yes, as to how much of that was they've been beat up, and how much of that is that's kind of their style of defense, where they're going to give up a lot of yards and so on. Because where they're solid at is stopping the run.
Yes. Yeah, you got one of the best linebackers in the league in Bobby Wagner, and then Jordan Brooks, first rounder from Texas Tech, I believe, a couple of years ago, who's graded pretty well against the run and not too bad in the coverage department either. So, if you're looking for short yardage passing plays, which the Bengals were hitting on all cylinders against the Cardinals, that's going to be a lot more difficult to do against that linebacker duo.
If we switch gears and talk about the Seahawks offense against the Bengals defense, their offense is interesting because then I think it kind of starts at the quarterback position with Geno Smith. For one, I know Tommy, he's the West Virginia guy watching with us. And I think
his opinion on Geno here.
Because I think if I would have asked Tommy, 10 years ago, because, Geno Smith has been in the league about 10 years, if not even a little bit longer than that. If he thought he would still be a starting quarterback in 2023, I'm sure even his most homer sensation of being a West Virginia fan would have said absolutely not. if you would have asked me 3 years ago if Geno Smith was going to be a starting quarterback in the league, yeah, I mean, he writes in and says, hell no.
Yeah. If you asked me in preseason of 2022 if Geno Smith was still going to be a starting quarterback in the league, I probably would say.
Because everyone thought that I think that he was going to be the filler and that they were going to draft a quarterback next year that would be the future. You know, whether it was your Anthony Richardson or your Will Levis or so on as to who it was going to be. And they didn't. And I think, you know, they've got Drew Lock as their backup, and I think they're just kind of rolling with Geno. But then again, I mean, Geno's been solid.
Yeah, he's looked pretty good the past couple seasons, and he's really transformed as a leader. I feel like I've seen some mic'd up moments from him where it just seems like he's got really good command of the offense, of the team in general. It's good seeing him turn his kind of turn his career around. I know I like to be a West Virginia hater sometimes, but I mean, I saw Geno Smith play in college. And I thought the world of him in terms of I thought he could be a really good quarterback in the NFL. And it's took a while for him to figure out. And he's not a world beater by any means right now, but he is a solid NFL starting quarterback. Definitely top half of the league, I would say. So
I don't know that they put him in the top half, but I'd
say top 15. You know, he was definitely top 15 last year.
Yeah, I don't know. We that be a good discussion. Maybe in the offseason we'll rank our NFL starting quarterbacks for each of us and figure out to tick, because Mick has his list too coming up in the offseason of his top 50 Bengals of all time, which obviously no one's gonna have an issue with.
No. Guys are all gonna agree with that.
Yes, they're gonna agree. That's not gonna make anybody mad because number 1 is Corey Dillon, and number 2 is Drew Sample, and 3 is Thad Moss. There's your spoiler alerts of what's to come on that. But I think when you're talking about the Seahawks offense, we can talk about Geno Smith, but we have to talk about Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf, who are, I would say, quietly one of the better wide receiver duos in the league. Like I know that they don't not get talked about at that top level, but they deserve to be. I think even more because they're a really solid duo.
Yeah. No, if I did pick an underrated wide receiver duo, I think the first duo I think about is DK and Tyler Lockett. And that's kind of another point I wanted to bring up here is we saw a lot of tackling issues against the Cardinals, who don't have the most robust skill player roster. You know, they don't have a lot of good skill players on the team, and we're going up against DK Metcalf, who's an absolute tank on the outside, and Tyler Lockett. Not to mention, they've also got a pretty good running back duo in Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet. Defense is going to have to shore up the tackling. They should be doing that regardless. But given the offensive skill players the Seahawks have, they really got to start getting it together. We haven't even talked about Jackson Smith and Jigba, but who hasn't really done anything yet. But
no, he hasn't. Yeah, and you never know if him coming back to Ohio could be his moment to shine and break out and have a breakout game against the Bengals, because I think Kenneth Walker the third is he was kind of your under the radar, one of those mid-round running back picks that hit.
Yeah.
For the Seahawks, because he was phenomenal at Michigan State. I mean, he got some Heisman conversation. He was so good his senior season at Michigan State, and he's pretty much just picked up where he left off there in the NFL. He's been really good, and Charbonnet really hasn't done a lot. But when you have a great guy like Kenneth Walker, he's just a complimentary piece right now.
Yeah, no, they've got a really good yin and yang kind of thing going on over there, because Kenneth Walker's kind of that short, kind of shifty, small running back that just makes people miss, and then you've got the Thunder in Zach Charbonnet, who's got like a 6'1", 230-pound build. He pretty much has the same build as Joe Mixon does, and yeah, I think that's been a pretty good running back duo. I think Seattle's offense first 4 weeks of the year has looked pretty good, very good actually.
Their offensive line is been beat up. Charles Cross, starting tackle, missed the last 3 games with the turf toe, did return to practice today. Phil Haynes, one of their guards, left with a calf injury against the Giants. He practiced today as well. So you would assume that if they're practicing on Wednesday, I don't know when we started the podcast, it hadn't been released as to whether they were limited or full practice, but you would assume if they're practicing on Wednesday that they probably will be good to play on Sunday. So that'll be 2 starters back on the offensive line for the Seahawks, which will be big because their offensive line, like we talked about, is probably your mid to low tier offensive line in the NFL. They're not as bad as what they've seen the past couple of weeks, but they're not, you're not going up against Trent Williams.
No.
As you will be here in a couple of weeks.
Yeah. The offensive line does leave a little bit to be desired on the Seattle's front, but and that's another key to victory for the Bengals on Sunday is pass rush has to be there again. I don't see a reason for them not to be, and that's definitely going to have to be. They're definitely going to have to bring it on Sunday in terms of the pass rush. I'm interested to see what the Trey Hendrickson versus Charles Cross matchup is going to be like. I think Trey's probably going to have another really good game. And then honestly, on the interior, I think is where a lot of the problems for the Seahawks lie. Abraham Lucas, I think, is out for a while, or he might be out for the rest of the year on the right tackle position. So, Sam could have a big day against Jake Kurhan. Is that how you pronounce it? And then, they don't
Jake Kurhan could walk into this podcast and smack us both across the face, and I wouldn't have any idea who he was.
Same here. And then, on the interior, you got Evan Brown, Oluwatimi, and then Phil Haynes is coming back. And I know that the Seahawks had a bye week last week, but we don't know when these guys came back or how rusty those guys could be. So,
and I think bye weeks are always really interesting too, because Seahawks were 3-1 going into the bye week. They had the big win against the Giants coming in. I know the Giants aren't necessarily world beaters, but they, that was a primetime win, was it not?
Monday Night Football win.
Yeah. So you're riding high after that, and then you're kind of sick. You don't necessarily get to ride that wave of momentum. Now the Bengals didn't do that when they had a big win on Monday Night Football. They obviously crapped the bed in their next game against the Titans. But I still think that the bye weeks are really interesting because you will see sometimes that teams come out flat, especially because it's bye week, traveling 3 hours in, it's 3 hours ahead. You're playing at technically 10 a.m. to what your body says is that will be interesting to see if the Seahawks come out flat. But to me, that's why I think this offense for the Bengals has got to jump out early.
Yeah, they've got to fire out the cannons there, and they're going to have to try to do it in a different way than what they did against the Cardinals. I don't think the short passing game is going to work against this linebacking duo. I think that you're going to have to come up with more creative ways to get the ball down the field. Obviously, Joe looked more like himself on Sunday, so maybe we start seeing Joe push the ball a little bit more against the Seahawks on Sunday. But yeah, that's definitely what's needed in terms of getting off to a fast start.
Other injury notes that we want to mention for the Seahawks, we touched on Jamal Adams, Charles Cross, and Phil Haynes. We touched on them. Artie Burns and Kobe Bryant, 2 of their backup cornerbacks. I just always, when I hear Artie Burns, I have to chuckle.
Anytime I hear his name in a game, I'm just like, is he really still in the league?
Yes.
That's what I think about William Jackson now at this point.
Yes, too. And those two will be forever tied in my mind of the Bengals taking William Jackson. But regardless, and then Kobe Bryant obviously has a Cincinnati connection as well. Mm-hmm. It's Kobe with a C, not the other Kobe. But Pete Carroll in his press conference today, his direct quote about them was they were trying to get back. So that to me says they're not playing on Sunday. Now, I don't know how much your backup corners has as a factor, but with the Bengals, with how much that they'd like to spread it out wide with wide receivers, it could be. You could see a guy like Tyler Boyd or, a Trenton Irwin if T. Higgins plays, have a big game if they go out and go 4 wide receiver sets.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
For the Bengals, injury-wise, ADG, again, did not practice. Cheeto did not practice again today, dealing with that back injury that he injured last Thursday in practice. Devin Harper did not practice today, as we talked about. Not a big loss there. T. Higgins was limited. That to me says, now he was limited, I believe, one day last week, so don't read too much into it, but I think it'll be one of those things that it might literally be a true game time decision, that morning they'll see how he feels, because with a rib injury,
I feel like
every time you move, you breathe, he gets hit, he's going to feel that. And it's a lot of it is your pain tolerance.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, I'm going to probably err on the side that T doesn't play.
Especially with the bye week.
Yeah. With the bye week coming up, I don't see why you would just, I don't see why you try him out there on Sunday. But we'll see.
Mick, what are your keys to victory today for the Cincinnati Bengals? Or rather on Sunday for the Bengals?
Yeah, so keys to victory for the Bengals. I think Joe Burrow is just going to have to kind of build off of the game against the Cardinals. And I think a lot of this is going to have to be done through him. I don't know. I don't really trust the running offense for the Bengals against the Seahawks linebacking duo, Bobby Wagner and Jordan Brooks. And the offensive line is gonna have to show up. Now, I think that they, based off of the grading, they appear to be overmatched against the Seahawks pass rush, but the Bengals have gone up against some pretty nasty pass rushes early on in the season. So I wonder how much of the grading is due to that and not due to them just playing, not playing up to par. So I think the biggest key to offense is just Joe kind of going out and doing his thing, and hopefully he kind of builds off that Cardinals performance. Defense, I think the biggest thing again is the pass rush. Seahawks offensive line, as we mentioned, is kind of beat up. You do have Charles Cross and Phil Haynes coming back. They're playing a backup permanently at the right tackle position for the rest of the year, and then their interior isn't great, even with Phil Haynes coming back in. So pass rush is going to be another big key to victory, and then tackling. They've got to start tackling better. We're not accustomed to seeing this with the Lou defense, so I wouldn't anticipate on this being a theme for the rest of the season, but they've got to right the ship starting this week.
Bengals play the Seahawks on Sunday at 1 o'clock on CBS. Again, Iron Eagle on the call with Charles Davis. Mick, who wins and why? Make your pick. Or do you want me to go first?
I'll go first. I think I'm going to go with, I think a lot of offense is going to be scored in this game. I'm going to go 31-28 Bengals.
31-28 Bengals is Mick's pick. I'm curious what the over-under is now. Now that we're talking about this, I didn't necessarily dive in. I'm going to have to look at it. I have it pulled up right here. So
54.5. 54.5 over-under.
45 is the over-under.
Hammer that over. Hammer it.
So Mick's money of the week is over 45 for Bengals. And my score here is I have the Bengals winning 23-17. So I guess I'm more on the under there as on that. I think that I think this will be, well, Tommy's going with a big one. Bengals 38-29. He's with you on it being a high-scoring game.
Is that a score-gami prediction? I don't think I've ever seen that as a score in a game.
It would. I mean, 29 is an odd one. There's no question about that.
Database? Is that a? There
is. Yeah, you can look it up on Pro Football Reference. They have a page where you can put in two scores and they'll let you know whether it's a score-gami or not. But I'm picking 23-17 Bengals. I think with it being at home, be good. I think you're going to see a little weird. Just because, I mean, I think back to the last time that the Seahawks came, which is, I think, on this date 8 years ago. I think it was today. I think it was October the 11th of 2015. And what will go down as one of the more memorable victories. I wasn't there, but as far as watching the game, that was a wild game. And I'll never forget that I think it was to put the game into overtime.
We're talking about the 2015 game.
Yes, where they ran out of timeouts, and they had to run the kicking unit on, and Mike Nugent just had to run and kick it as time expired, and he ended up nailing it, sending it into overtime. So that game will always stand up. So I think we're going to see a little weird, but I'm going 23-17 Bengals. Riley's picking Bengals 35-24.
Well, there we go. We're predicting a lot of offense. Everybody, hammer the over. You've got to hammer the over in this. 39-28, surprisingly, is not a scoregami.
38-29 was his pick.
Wait.
Chris Pope writes in, he says, Bengals win 27-24.
Wow. That's Sammy's fiance, by the way. Happy wedding week, Chris.
So Chris is picking the Bengals 27-24.
It's funny because I think that's the score of the 2015 game, if I remember correctly.
Yes, I think you are correct in that.
Really?
So 38-29, how many times has it happened?
Is that an option?
Does it not say how many times it's happened? I can't imagine it's happened many times at all.
That has never happened.
This is great podcasting too.
What is this? You say 38-29?
That is what Tommy picked.
Once.
It
is a 2020 game between the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Philadelphia Eagles.
Interesting. So maybe we'll have a I guess Bengals scoregami with that when it comes in.
Oh wait, 2 times. My bad. I didn't read this right. So that game and then 1967 game between the Oakland Raiders and the New York Jets. 38-29, Oakland won.
I guess Tyler Rigsby writing in here on our YouTube channel. I guess he's a fan of the Seahawks. But Tyler, we appreciate you locked in, and hopefully I think it's going to be a great game between these two teams.
By the way,
is it? Oh, it is.
My cousin's husband. Yeah.
Is he just trolling us, or is he a Seahawks fan?
I don't know. I told everybody about this podcast, and I'm glad I did. We got a lot of interaction from the family here, and Riley, who's not here,
and Tommy. Don't forget about Tommy. Unless you count Tommy as family.
I don't know.
Tommy, you all are both from. I was gonna say you both are from West Virginia. You're related somehow.
Probably.
And if I'm being honest, my mom's from West Virginia, so I guess that means we're related as well somehow when it all runs down. I'm sure we can tie it back somehow. It's not like I'm from Kentucky, it's not like Kentucky's much better than when it comes to that.
We might have more West Virginians viewing this than any other state.
That's a dangerous thing when it comes in. Gosh, now I almost shouldn't have put that up there because the top's the way to do it. I got my red towel around here somewhere.
That's my cousin Madison, by the way. That's Tyler's wife.
Go Tops.
Yeah.
That's what I say.
Yep.
Go Tops.
Madison, Sam's a huge WKU fan, so don't acknowledge his presence.
Speaking of that, I haven't told you this yet, but I got to give a shout out to one of my former. So I have some high school kids that work for me. On my day job. And one of my kids that used to work for me is now an equipment manager at WKU. And he is going to be giving me WKU clearly in their locker room had a list of every NFL team, like a sign, and the players that played for it. He's given me the Bengals one. I guess they're updating it. So, and on there, of course, is Jeremy Johnson. So it's really cool looking at the list of
who it was there. And then,
there's multiple WKU guys that have played for the Bengals. So they even have the guys that signed on the practice squad and stuff. Like Antoine Grant a couple of years ago was on the 2016 practice squad and so on. So it's cool though. So I'll be looking forward to that. So I know Cole's not necessarily watching this, but I'll give him a shout out because I'm really looking forward to it. And I'll make sure to send it to you. And I got to figure out a place here in the office to hang it because when I support it, you've got Darius Brooks in 2012, Dan Klein in 2009, Anthony Green in 90. And he had guys in 88, 87, and 83 as well. So I'm excited to add that here to the nice background that I do have here. But we're both picking the Bengals to win on Sunday against the Seattle Seahawks. Mick, you will not be there. I will be. But it should be a great matchup.
Yeah, I'll be watching it. I don't know if I'll be watching the whole game. Just because we'll be kind of traveling out and flying back to Cincinnati. I'll try to catch as much of it as I can, much like kind of had to do last Sunday. So What are your plans? You going down to Bengal Gems on Sunday, or
Probably be there at some point. I know we got to talk about some things and so on, but yeah, we should be excited about getting hopefully a Bengals victory, which is the most important thing. And I've been going back and forth. And I can leave this up to the people. Is since when Mick and I go to the game together, we usually park. Mick works downtown, so we park it where he works because you have a parking pass. But since I don't necessarily have access to that,
oh, I was going to send that to you.
Oh, were you? Okay. Well,
yes.
That works. But I've been going back and forth on the Bengals are 1-0 this year when I've parked on the Kentucky side and walked across the bridge. Now, here's the thing.
No, don't do this.
I don't like walking across bridges. But it's to me, I've been sitting here thinking, I'm like, is this the reason? Because I might not be superstitious, but I'm a little stitious. And is that the reason why? Am I going to have to just bite the bullet and give myself mini panic attacks walking across the Roebling Bridge every game because it means that they're going to win? Or does that have no bearing on the game at all?
No, don't make this have any bearing whatsoever. That means I got to walk more of a distance whenever you pick me up on any other game for the rest of the year. So no, we're not.
It's actually it's pretty even. It's pretty even. We just have to walk across the bridge. Yeah, it is because I looked it up. It's pretty much the same.
Ample
distance,
parking in Covington. There's no way I'm not going to use my parking at the Strips.
No, I'm not saying that we are, but
I'm not going to use my parking at the Strips.
So that's why I probably should just not do that. But thank everybody for tuning in tonight to this week's edition of Jungle Juice. Make sure you follow us on our Facebook page. Make sure you subscribe to us on our YouTube channel. We're on all of the podcast platforms as well, Spotify, iTunes, wherever you might listen to your podcast, iHeartRadio, we're on there. Follow our buddy Josh Isles over at Houday Nation Today. He does great work over there. You can see their logo right there on the screen. So make sure you follow him. And for some good Bengals content there, follow us. And make sure you join too. Mick and I are both admins of the Houday Nation Facebook group, as is Tommy. So make sure you join that for some great Bengals conversation and also some horrible takes, because there's plenty of that in there.
Oh, yeah. We haven't seen as many because they won this week. So we've seen a little bit more positive.
We did have the one person that tried to argue with me that the Bengals should be running more 13 personnel, which is for, that it means 3 tight ends. I'm like, no, the Bengals should not be playing 3 tight ends. They barely have 1 tight end, let alone putting 3 on the field. But that can be a discussion for another day because, we've had a happy conversation. I don't need to get my my blood boiling.
Yeah, no, we won't talk about that. We'll bring that up in the off season. That's
yeah, great conversations to have in the off season. Congratulations to your sister and Chris.
Congrats, Sammy. Well, I can't wait for the wedding.
Is that Saturday?
It is on Saturday. It's a
Saturday.
Beach wedding. Got a really nice beach house. I'll have to show you. I'll show you. I'll send you a link to the house, but it's pretty nice over there.
You just post it on the Facebook page. Why not? Maybe everybody wants to see your great beach house. Go live later on and do a tour of it, of everything that's going on.
Chris is doing some type of wedding week video. So
well, there you go. So you don't want to spoil too much of it.
Yeah.
Appreciate though everyone tuning in. That'll wrap us up. Mick, any final comments or final thoughts on Bengals Seahawks?
No. Houday, and thanks for watching, guys.
Absolutely. We'll see you back here next week every Wednesday at 8:00 Eastern. I know, Mick, you might not be on next week, but we're gonna figure out some things that we can figure out on how to be creative for some bye week blues next week. So that'll be our podcast next week. So until next time, Houday.
Houday.